The obsidian tower swallowed the afternoon light, 23 floors of glass and steel looming over Fifth Avenue like a tombstone. Olivia Carter's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she killed the engine of her aging sedan. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since the letter arrived, since her world tilted sideways and refused to straighten. The lobby smelled like money and marble polish. Her reflection in the polished floor looked small, tired. The shadows under her green eyes told stories she didn't want to share. "I'm here to see Julian Blackwood." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. The receptionist's practiced smile flickered. "Do you have an appointment? Tell him Olivia Carter is here about the Madison Avenue property." Something changed in the woman's expression. Recognition. Maybe pity. 23rd floor. "He's expecting you." The elevator climbed like her pulse rate, each floor a drumbeat in her chest. She didn't knock when she reached the imposing double doors. She shoved them open, ready to unleash 3 weeks of rage. The office could have fit her entire apartment. Original paintings lined the walls, the kind she'd only seen at auctions she couldn't afford. But all of it blurred when she saw him standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against Manhattan's jagged skyline. Julian Blackwood turned. Time stuttered. He was younger than she'd imagined. Maybe 35, with dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that seemed carefully careless. His eyes were storm-cloud gray, and they locked onto her with an intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. "Miss Carter." His voice was deep, measured. "I was wondering when you'd come." The calm statement knocked her off balance. "You were expecting me?" "Anyone with your determination would have shown up eventually." He gestured to a leather chair. "Please, sit." "I'd rather stand." She crossed her arms, armor against whatever game he was playing. "I want to know how you did it. How you stole my family's building." One dark eyebrow lifted. "Steal is a strong word. I purchased the property through entirely legal means." "Legal doesn't mean right." Her voice cracked. "That building has been in my family since 1892. My great-great-grandfather built it with his own hands. My grandmother grew up there. My parents, my mother, they all lived there. And you just took it." Julian moved toward his desk with the fluid grace of a predator. He picked up a folder she hadn't noticed. "Perhaps you should direct your anger at the people who actually sold the property." "What are you talking about? Nobody in my family would sell that building." "Your Uncle Richard did. 6 months ago." The words hit like fists. "That's impossible. Uncle Richard died 3 years ago." Julian's expression shifted, something almost like sympathy crossing his features. "I'm sorry. The death certificate in your family's records was falsified. Richard Carter is alive. Living in Monte Carlo with the proceeds from the sale." Her legs gave out. The leather chair caught her as the room tilted. "No." The word was barely a whisper. "We had a funeral. My mother still visits his grave." Julian slid documents across the polished desk. Her uncle's signature, page after page. Sales agreements. Bank statements showing wire transfers to accounts in countries she'd never heard of. "Why?" Her voice broke. "Why would he do this? I was hoping you could tell me." Julian sat on the edge of his desk, closer now. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and cedar. "I've spent 6 months trying to understand your family. The more I learn, the less sense it makes." She looked up, anger bleeding into confusion. "Why would you spend 6 months researching my family?" His gray eyes held hers. "Because 30 years ago, your grandfather and my father were business partners. They built half of Lower Manhattan together. Then something happened. Something that destroyed their partnership and nearly destroyed both families." The air in the office felt thin. "What happened?" she asked. That's what I'm trying to find out. Julian's jaw tightened. My father died 10 years ago. He took most of the story with him. But in his final year, he became obsessed with your family. Hired investigators. Collected documents. Spent millions trying to piece together what went wrong. And you just continued his obsession? He stood, walked back to the windows. The setting sun cast his face in shadow and light. My father's last words to me were, "Make it right with the Carters." I had no idea what he meant until I found his research. Olivia's mind raced through fragments of family stories, her mother's bitter comments about her grandfather's business partner, the carefully avoided topic at every family gathering. Julian turned to face her fully. I bought the building when Richard put it on the market. I wanted to understand what my father felt so guilty about. And I couldn't let it fall into the hands of developers who would tear it down. She studied him, looking for the lie, the angle, the trap. But his posture was open, his expression troubled. So what now? Her voice was raw. You own our family legacy. You know more about our history than I do. What exactly do you want from me, Mr. Blackwood? He pulled out a single sheet of paper from his desk drawer. Slid it across to her. This is a contract. If you agree to help me uncover the truth about our family's past, at the end of 6 months, I'll transfer full ownership of the Madison Avenue building back to you. No payment required. Olivia stared at the document as if it might explode. Why would you do that? Julian's voice dropped, became something raw and honest. Because my father spent his last years consumed by guilt over something he couldn't fix. I don't want to die with that same weight. He paused. And because I've read your grandfather's letters to my father, before whatever happened between them. They were best friends. They built something beautiful together. He moved closer, and she could feel the heat of him, the intensity. Maybe we can do the same. The words hung in the air between them, dangerous and full of promise. Olivia's hand trembled as she reached for the pen on his desk. What if we find out something neither of us wants to know? Julian's gray eyes held hers, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition. Then at least we'll know the truth. His voice was barely above a whisper. Isn't that better than living with questions? She signed her name. And everything changed. The archive room smelled like old paper and secrets. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of light cutting through the basement window of Julian's building. Boxes lined the walls, decades of documents that his father had collected like evidence for a trial that never came. Olivia pulled another folder from the stack, her third hour in the windowless room. Julian sat across from her at the metal table, his suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up. She'd tried not to notice the corded muscles of his forearms, the way his dark hair fell forward when he concentrated. Listen to this. She held up a faded letter. January 1994. Your father writes to mine, the Riverside Project is our legacy, Thomas. Together we'll build something that outlasts us both. Partners until the end. Julian's gray eyes darkened. 6 months later, they weren't speaking. My father bought out your grandfather's share for a fraction of what it was worth. Or so the story goes. Olivia set down the letter. But these bank statements don't match. The amount deposited into my grandfather's account was actually more than market value. Then why would your family believe they were cheated? I don't know. She rubbed her temples. Nothing makes sense. My mother talks about your father like he's the devil. But these letters read like they were brothers. Julian stood, moved to the window. The afternoon light caught the sharp line of his jaw. My father kept a journal. I've never been able to bring myself to read it. Why not? He turned to face her. Because what if he was the villain in this story? What if everything my family built was on the back of destroying yours? The vulnerability in his voice made something crack inside her chest. Then we deal with it, she said quietly. Together. His eyes met hers, and the air between them charged with something neither of them could name. The moment shattered when her phone buzzed. Her mother. 3 missed calls. I should take this. Olivia stepped into the hallway, pressing the phone to her ear. Mom, I'm sorry, I've been busy. With what? The gallery is barely staying afloat, Olivia. I got another call from the landlord. We're 3 months behind. Guilt twisted in her stomach. I know. I'm working on it. Are you? Her mother's voice was sharp. Or are you chasing ghosts? Let the building go. It's gone. We need to focus on what we have left. Olivia's throat tightened. What if I told you Uncle Richard is alive? Silence. Then, in a voice Olivia had never heard her mother use, don't. Mom, I've seen proof. Bank statements, signatures, everything. He faked his death and sold our building. I said don't. Her mother's voice cracked. Whatever you're digging into, stop. Some truths aren't meant to be found. The line went dead. Olivia stood in the hallway, her heart hammering against her ribs. When she turned back to the archive room, Julian was standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. You heard? Some of it. He stepped closer. What did she mean, some truths aren't meant to be found? I don't know. But she sounded scared. Julian's jaw tightened. We need to find my father's journal. They spent the next hour tearing through boxes until Julian's hand closed around a leather-bound book hidden beneath a false bottom in an old trunk. The pages were filled with his father's handwriting, neat and precise. Julian's hands shook as he opened it. The first entry was dated March 1994. Thomas discovered what I did. He came to my office today, rage in his eyes, betrayal in every word. He called me a thief. A liar. Said I'd destroyed everything we built together. But he doesn't understand. I did it to protect him. To protect both our families from what was coming. Olivia leaned closer, her shoulder brushing Julian's. Protect them from what? Julian flipped pages, scanning entries. Then he stopped. His face went pale. What is it? She asked. He turned the journal so she could see. A photograph was taped to the page. 2 men standing in front of a construction site, arms around each other's shoulders. Her grandfather and Julian's father, both young, both smiling. But it wasn't the photograph that made her blood run cold. It was the caption underneath in careful handwriting, with Thomas, 2 weeks before the accident. Before I learned the truth about what he'd done. Before I had to make the choice. What accident? Olivia's voice was barely a whisper. What choice? Julian flipped to the next page. The handwriting became jagged, rushed. The police came today. They say it was an accident. A gas leak in the Riverside building. 12 workers dead. But I know the truth. Thomas cut corners. Saved money on safety inspections. Bribed the inspector. I have proof. Bank records. Emails. Everything. The room spun. No. Olivia stood so fast her chair clattered backward. That's not true. My grandfather wouldn't do that. He was a good man. Julian's voice was quiet, careful. What if he wasn't? You're lying. Anger surged hot and defensive. This is exactly what you wanted, isn't it? To prove your father was the hero and mine was the monster? Olivia, I didn't write this. No, but your father did. And he had every reason to lie, to justify whatever he did to destroy my family. She grabbed her coat. This was a mistake. Wait. Julian caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Don't run from this. Let go of me. Not until you listen. His gray eyes burned into hers. I know this hurts. But if we stop now, we'll never know the whole truth. Maybe my mother was right. Maybe some truths aren't worth finding. Julian's grip loosened, but he didn't let go. His thumb traced a circle on the inside of her wrist, and she hated how her pulse jumped at the contact. Do you really believe that? His voice was low, intimate. Or are you afraid of what else we might find? She pulled away, but the ghost of his touch remained on her skin. I need air. She left him standing in the archive room, surrounded by the ghosts of their father's choices, the journal still open to the photograph of two men who once called each other brother. Outside, the city noise crashed over her. Olivia leaned against the cold brick wall, trying to breathe, trying to think. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. You don't know what you're risking. He's using you. Her blood ran cold. She looked up at the building, at the archive room window where Julian's shadow moved behind the glass. Another text came through. Ask him about the offshore accounts. Ask him why he really bought your building. It wasn't for redemption. Olivia's hands shook as she stared at the screen. Then a third message appeared, and her world tilted again. Ask him about the night your father died. Olivia didn't go back inside. She stood on the sidewalk, staring at the anonymous texts until the words burned into her retinas. The city moved around her, but she was frozen, caught between the man in the building behind her and the ghost of her father's memory. Her father had died when she was 12. Heart attack, they'd said. Sudden. Tragic. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and her mother's hollow eyes. But now, 10 years later, someone was suggesting it wasn't that simple. Her phone buzzed again. The parking garage. Level B3. 30 minutes. Come alone if you want answers. Olivia's rational mind screamed trap. But her desperate heart was louder. She texted back, "Who are you?" The response was immediate, someone who knows what Julian Blackwood is really after. And it's not redemption. 28 minutes later, Olivia descended into the concrete tomb of the parking garage 3 blocks away. The fluorescent lights hummed and flickered, casting everything in sickly yellow. Her footsteps echoed too loud in the empty space. A figure emerged from behind a concrete pillar. Uncle Richard. He looked older than she remembered, thinner, with gray threading through his dark hair. But his eyes were the same sharp blue, the ones she'd inherited from her mother's side of the family. You're really alive. The words came out broken. I am. His voice was rough, apologetic. And I'm sorry, Olivia. For all of it. Sorry? Rage ignited in her chest. You faked your death. You sold our building. You destroyed Mom. And you're sorry? I had no choice. He stepped closer, hands raised in surrender. They would have killed me if I stayed. They still might if they find out I'm here. Who? What are you talking about? Richard glanced over his shoulder, paranoid. Julian Blackwood isn't who you think he is. His father wasn't trying to make amends. He was trying to cover up what he did. The construction accident. Olivia's voice was hollow. The 12 workers. It wasn't an accident. Richard's face twisted with old pain. Your grandfather found out that Vincent Blackwood was laundering money through their construction projects. Mob money. Dirty cash that needed cleaning. When Thomas threatened to go to the police, Vincent staged the gas leak. Made it look like your grandfather's negligence. The world tilted. Those 12 men died because Vincent needed a scapegoat. He framed your grandfather, destroyed his reputation, drove him to an early grave with guilt over something he didn't do. Richard's voice cracked. And when your father started asking questions 10 years ago, started digging into the old case. Vincent had him killed too. Olivia's knees buckled. She caught herself against a car, its cold metal the only solid thing in a liquefying world. No. Dad died of a heart attack. Induced. Richard's eyes were wet. I have proof. Medical records. An autopsy that was suppressed. I found it all after your father died. That's when I knew I had to disappear. I couldn't fight them. They're too powerful. So I took the money from the building sale and ran. You coward. The words tasted like ash. You left us to face them alone. I left you alive. His voice turned sharp. If I'd stayed, you'd be dead too. They don't leave loose ends. And now you're getting close to the truth with Julian, and they'll come for you next. Julian isn't his father. Isn't he? Richard pulled out a manila envelope. Look at these. Inside were photographs. Julian meeting with men in expensive suits. Bank statements showing massive transfers between offshore accounts. And a single document that made Olivia's blood run cold. A life insurance policy. On her father. With Julian's father listed as the beneficiary. Vincent collected $5 million when your father died. Richard's voice was gentle now, pitying. And when Vincent died, everything transferred to Julian. Including the debt. What debt? Your grandfather owed Vincent money. A lot of it. Interest has been compounding for 30 years. Julian didn't buy your building out of guilt, Olivia. He bought it because legally, you've owed his family $12 million for decades. The parking garage spun. He's been playing you from the start. Earning your trust. Getting you to help him find proof that your grandfather was responsible for the accident. Once he has that, he can use it to seize everything your family has left. The gallery. Your mother's savings. All of it. Olivia's phone buzzed. Julian calling. She stared at the screen, her hand shaking. Don't answer it. Richard grabbed her wrist. Come with me. I have money. We can disappear together. Start over somewhere he'll never find us. Let go of me. Olivia, please. He's dangerous. She yanked her arm free. So are you. You sold our legacy to save yourself. Don't pretend this is about protecting me. I'm trying to save your life. By running away? Like you always do. She backed toward the elevator. I'm not you, Uncle Richard. I don't run from the truth. Then you're a fool. His voice turned cold. And you'll end up just like your father. The elevator doors closed on his face. Olivia rode up in silence, her mind a war zone. Everything Julian had told her, everything she'd started to feel for him, it all curdled into something sick and uncertain. But Richard was a liar and a coward. Could she trust anything he said? Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Julian, where are you? We need to talk. I found something else in the journal. She stared at the message. Then typed back, I know about the insurance policy. I know about the debt. I know everything. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, it's not what you think. Please come back. Let me explain. Olivia's thumb hovered over the screen. Then she made a choice. The Madison Avenue building. 1 hour. Bring the deed. She was done being played. Done being manipulated. If Julian wanted the truth, she'd give it to him. But first, she needed to go home and get something her father had left her before he died. A safety deposit box key he'd made her promise never to use unless her life depended on it. Tonight, it did. An hour later, Olivia stood in the dusty lobby of her family's building, the one Julian now owned. Moonlight streamed through cracked windows. The smell of old wood and memories hung thick in the air. She heard footsteps on the stairs. Julian emerged from the darkness, and even now, even knowing everything she knew, her traitorous heart still stuttered at the sight of him. "You came." His voice was rough, uncertain. "I said I would." She held up a USB drive. "This has everything my father collected before he died. Proof of what your father did. The money laundering. The accident. All of it." Julian's face went pale. "Olivia, please, let me explain." "Explain how you lied to me? How you've been using me to cover up your father's crimes?" "I never lied to you." He stepped closer, and she saw something raw in his eyes. Something that looked like pain. "Everything I told you about wanting to make things right, it's true." "Then explain the insurance policy." "I didn't know about it until 2 days ago. I found it in the journal. My father collected that money, yes. But I've never touched it. It's been sitting in an account for 10 years. And the debt?" Julian's jaw tightened. "It's real. But it's not what you think. Your grandfather didn't owe my father money. My father owed yours. He was the one laundering mob money. And when Thomas discovered it, Vincent framed him to save himself." The words hung in the air between them. "Then why does the contract say my grandfather was indebted to yours?" "Because Vincent was a monster who couldn't stand the guilt." Julian's voice cracked. He spent his last years trying to rewrite history, to make himself the victim. "But I've been collecting the real evidence. The truth. And I was going to give it all to you." "Was going to?" Past tense. Julian pulled an envelope from his coat. Inside was the deed to the building. And beneath it, a flash drive identical to the one she held. "I wanted to wait until I had everything. Until I could prove beyond doubt that your family was innocent. That mine was guilty." His gray eyes met hers, naked and honest. "Because once I give you this, once the truth comes out, my father's legacy is destroyed. My family's reputation. Everything." Olivia stared at him. "And you're willing to do that? For you?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes." The air between them crackled. Then the sound of slow clapping echoed through the empty lobby. They both spun. Uncle Richard stepped out of the shadows, and he wasn't alone. 3 men in dark suits flanked him, and all of them had guns. "Touching," Richard said, his voice dripping venom. "Really? I almost believed it myself." The guns gleamed dull silver in the moonlight. Olivia's blood turned to ice water. "Uncle Richard?" Her voice came out small, confused. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done 10 years ago." He moved closer, and she saw it now, the coldness in his blue eyes that she'd mistaken for fear in the parking garage. Finishing what Vincent started. Julian stepped in front of Olivia, his body a shield. "This is between us, Richard. Let her go." "Between us?" Richard laughed, sharp and bitter. "You still don't understand, do you? None of you ever did." "Understand what?" Olivia's mind raced, trying to find the angle, the logic. Richard's smile was knife-thin. "That I'm the one who's been playing you both. From the very beginning." The world shifted beneath her feet. The insurance policy. The debt. The anonymous texts. Julian's voice was deadly quiet. "It was all you." "Very good." Richard clapped again, mocking. "Though it took you long enough to figure it out." "But why?" Olivia's voice broke. "We're family." "Family." Richard spat the word like poison. "Your father was my brother, and he was going to destroy everything. Vincent Blackwood offered me a deal. Help him silence Thomas, and I'd get a cut of the insurance money. $2.5 million to make one phone call. The truth hit Olivia like a physical blow. You killed Dad. The words were ash and agony. Not Vincent. You. I made a phone call. Richard's expression didn't change. What Vincent's people did after that, that's not on me. You murdered your own brother for money. Julian's hands clenched into fists. You're the one who arranged the heart attack. Who covered it up. And I've been living quite comfortably in Monte Carlo ever since. Richard examined his nails, casual, cruel. Until you two started digging. Started threatening to expose everything. I couldn't have that. One of the suited men stepped forward, pressing a gun to Julian's temple. Olivia's scream caught in her throat. Here's what's going to happen. Richard's voice was businesslike now, detached. You're going to give me both of those flash drives. Then you're going to sign papers transferring all claims to the building, the gallery, everything, over to me. And then you're both going to have a tragic accident. A terrible fire in this old building. So sad. You won't get away with this. Julian's voice was steady despite the gun against his skull. My lawyers know where I am. If I don't check in, they'll come looking. Will they? Richard smiled. You told your assistant you were taking a personal evening. No meetings. No calls. You specifically asked not to be disturbed. He turned to Olivia. And you told your mother you were staying late at the gallery. No one knows you're here. He'd planned everything. Olivia's hand tightened around the USB drive in her pocket. If she gave it to him, they were dead. If she didn't, they were dead. But maybe she could buy time. The evidence is already uploaded. The lie came smooth, desperate. Cloud storage. If anything happens to us, it goes public automatically. Richard's smile didn't waver. Nice try. But your father was paranoid, not stupid. He kept everything offline. And I've been monitoring your accounts. You haven't uploaded anything. He was right. She'd been too focused on confronting Julian to think about backups. Last chance. Richard held out his hand. The drives. Now. Julian's eyes met hers. In that gray gaze, she saw a question. A choice. She knew what he was asking. Together or not at all. Olivia pulled the drive from her pocket. Stepped forward. Richard's smile widened. Then Julian moved. He grabbed the gunman's wrist, twisted hard. The gun clattered to the floor. Chaos erupted. Run! Julian shouted, grappling with two of the men. But Olivia didn't run. She dove for the fallen gun, her fingers closing around cold metal just as Richard lunged for her. You stupid girl. He grabbed her wrist, squeezing until bones ground together. Just like your father. Too brave for your own good. Pain exploded up her arm. The gun slipped from her fingers. Then Julian was there, slamming into Richard, driving him back against the wall. They crashed into the dusty reception desk. Wood splintered. Go! Julian's voice was ragged. Olivia, get out of here. But she couldn't move. Couldn't leave him. One of the suited men recovered, raised his weapon. Time slowed. The gun pointed at Julian's back. Olivia saw the finger tighten on the trigger. She threw herself forward. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Fire bloomed in her shoulder, white-hot and all-consuming. She hit the ground hard, the USB drive skittering across the floor from her hand. Olivia! Julian's scream seemed to come from very far away. She saw him break free from Richard, saw him drop to his knees beside her. His hands pressed against her shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. His face was a mask of terror and rage. Stay with me. His voice cracked. Please, stay with me. The drive. She could barely form words. Don't let him get it. But Richard was already moving, his hand closing around the small piece of plastic. Finally. He stood, triumphant. This is the only copy, isn't it? Your father's last secret. Julian looked between Olivia bleeding on the floor and Richard with the evidence. His face twisted with anguish. Make your choice, Blackwood. Richard backed toward the door, his men covering him. Save her or stop me. But you can't do both. Olivia saw the war in Julian's eyes. She felt his hands shaking against her wound. Go. She forced the word out. Stop him. I can't leave you. If he gets away, my father died for nothing. Blood filled her mouth. Go. Olivia, no. Please. She grabbed his collar, pulled him close. Finish this. For both of us. For one suspended moment, they were frozen. His forehead pressed against hers. His breath ragged. Then he kissed her, desperate and fierce and full of everything they'd never said. I'm coming back for you, he whispered against her lips. I swear. Then he was gone, chasing Richard into the darkness. Olivia lay on the cold floor, her blood spreading across what her great-great-grandfather had laid by hand. The pain was distant now, floating. She heard sirens somewhere far away, her phone was in her pocket. She could call for help. She should call for help. But her hand was so heavy. And she was so tired. The lobby ceiling swam above her. She thought about her father. About whether he'd felt this cold when he died. Whether he'd been afraid. She wasn't afraid. She'd made her choice. She just hoped Julian made it back. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy. Rushed. Not Julian. One of the suited men appeared above her, his gun pointed at her head. Loose ends, he said simply. Olivia closed her eyes. And heard the shot that should have killed her miss by inches as someone tackled the gunman from behind. Her eyes snapped open. Julian crashed into the man with brutal efficiency. They fought, violent and quick. Another shot. A cry of pain. Then silence. Julian staggered back to her, blood on his shirt, she couldn't tell whose. He dropped to his knees, gathered her against his chest. I've got you. His voice was broken. I've got you. Richard? The word was barely a breath. Gone. With the drive. Julian's jaw tightened. But I called the police before I came back. They'll catch him. You came back. Wonder colored her fading voice. You chose me. I'll always choose you. He pressed his hand harder against her wound, his other hand cradling her face. Stay with me, Olivia. Please. The sirens were closer now. Flashing lights painted the walls red and blue. I'm sorry. She didn't know what she was apologizing for. For doubting him. For getting shot. For falling for him when everything was so impossibly complicated. Don't. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, tasting her tears and blood. Don't you dare apologize. The evidence. Her mind was fog. He has it all. No. Julian's smile was small, broken. He has your father's drive. But I still have mine. And I uploaded everything to my lawyers an hour ago. Before I came here. The truth is already out, Olivia. It's over. Over. She repeated the word like a prayer. Paramedics burst through the door. Voices shouted. Hands pulled Julian away from her. Sir, you need to let her go. No. He fought them, desperate. I can't leave her. Sir, we need to work. You're covered in blood. Are you hurt? Olivia tried to call to him, to tell him it was okay. But darkness was pulling her under, warm and soft and so tempting. The last thing she saw was his gray eyes, wild with fear and love. The last thing she heard was his voice, "Don't you dare leave me. Not now. Not after everything." Then nothing. Just the dark. And the distant hope that morning would come. White ceiling. Beeping machines. The antiseptic smell of hospitals. Olivia's eyes cracked open to fluorescent lights that stabbed straight into her skull. Her shoulder screamed with every breath, a dull, throbbing agony that meant she was alive. "You're awake." Julian's voice, rough from disuse. She turned her head slowly, fighting through the morphine fog. He sat in the chair beside her bed, unshaven, exhausted, beautiful. His gray eyes were bloodshot, his expensive shirt wrinkled and stained. He looked like he'd been through war. "How long?" Her voice was sandpaper. 3 days. His hand found hers, careful of the 4. "You coded twice on the operating table. They didn't think you'd make it. Disappointing them seems to be my specialty." She tried to smile. Pain lanced through her. "Richard?" Julian's jaw tightened. "Arrested in Monte Carlo. Tried to board a plane to Dubai. Interpol picked him up 6 hours after the shooting. And the evidence? Front page of every newspaper." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "The truth about my father, your grandfather, all of it. Vincent Blackwood was laundering mob money. Thomas Carter discovered it and was framed for the construction accident. And your father was murdered when he got too close to the truth." Olivia closed her eyes. "My mother? She's in the cafeteria. She's been here every day. She knows everything now. How did she take it?" "Better than I expected." Julian's voice softened. "I think part of her always suspected. About Richard. About what really happened to your father." Silence settled between them, heavy with all the things that had been broken and rebuilt in fire. "You came back for me." Olivia opened her eyes, met his gaze. "You could have stopped Richard. Could have gotten the evidence back. But you came back. The evidence didn't matter." Julian's voice was fierce, raw. "Nothing matters without you." "That's not true." "It is to me." He stood, moved closer, his free hand cupping her face with infinite gentleness. "These past 3 days, sitting here, wondering if you'd wake up, it's been the worst hell of my life. And I realized something." "What?" "That I don't care about redemption anymore. I don't care about my father's guilt or your grandfather's innocence. I care about you. Only you." Her heart stuttered. "Julian. I'm in love with you, Olivia Carter." The words fell between them like stones into still water. "I think I have been since you stormed into my office with fire in your eyes and fury in your voice. And if you'll let me, I want to spend whatever time we have left making sure you never doubt that again." Tears burned hot in her eyes. "We barely know each other. Our families destroyed each other. We're built on lies and blood and broken things." "I know." His smile was sad, hopeful. "But maybe that's exactly why we fit." She should say no. Should protect herself. Should remember that love built on tragedy never lasted. But she was so tired of protecting herself. "I love you too." The confession tore out of her, terrifying and liberating. "God help me, I do." Julian kissed her then, careful of her injuries, tasting of coffee and relief and promises neither of them knew if they could keep. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "There's something else you should know." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded document. "The building. I'm transferring it back to you. Full ownership. No strings. Julian, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. Your family built that place. It should be yours. And maybe someday, if you'll let me, we can restore it together. Not as a Blackwood or a Carter, but as us. Us. She tested the word, found she liked how it sounded. What about your company? Your reputation? My uncle destroyed both our family names. The scandal is everywhere. Let them talk. Julian's smile turned wicked. I've spent my whole life trying to live up to my father's legacy. Maybe it's time I built my own. With a woman who got shot in your family's building? With a woman who threw herself in front of a bullet for me. His voice cracked. With the only person who's ever made me want to be better than what I came from. The beeping of the heart monitor filled the silence. So what now? Olivia asked finally. Where do we go from here? Julian sat back on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle her. That depends. What do you want? She thought about her father. About the truth he'd died protecting. About her grandfather, whose name was finally cleared. About her uncle, who'd betrayed them all for money that would never buy him peace. And she thought about the man beside her, whose father had started all of this, whose guilt had driven him to find her, whose love had made him choose her over justice. I want to rebuild. The answer came clear, certain. The building. The gallery. Our family's names. All of it. Together? Together. She squeezed his hand. But no more secrets. No more lies. If we're doing this, we do it in the light. Deal. Julian leaned forward, pressed his forehead to hers. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at sharing feelings. I tend to brood in expensive suits and make dramatic declarations at inconvenient times. And I'm stubborn and reckless and apparently have a habit of getting shot. We're a disaster waiting to happen. The best kind. She smiled, and this time it didn't hurt. Kiss me again. He did. Slow and deep and full of everything they'd found in the wreckage of their father's mistakes. When they broke apart, sunlight was streaming through the hospital window, painting everything gold. My mother is going to have opinions about this, Olivia said. About us. So is my board of directors. And the press will have a field day. Probably. Julian's grin was pure trouble. Good thing I like a challenge. Good thing I like you. Just like love. She corrected, feeling the word settle into truth. I love you, Julian Blackwood. Against all logic and reason and self-preservation, I love you. I love you, Olivia Carter. He kissed her knuckles. And I'm going to spend every day proving I'm worthy of it. 3 months later, Olivia stood in the lobby of the Madison Avenue building, watching construction. Crews restore what time and neglect had damaged. Original wood gleamed under fresh polish. Cracked windows had been replaced. The space was coming back to life, brick by brick, just like she was. Julian appeared beside her, 2 coffees in hand. He'd traded his corporate suits for jeans and a button-down, rolled sleeves showing the construction dust on his forearms. Your mother called. He handed her a cup. She wants to know if we're coming to dinner on Sunday. What did you tell her? That I'd check with you. He slipped an arm around her waist, careful of her still healing shoulder. Though I should warn you, she's planning to ask when we're getting married. Olivia choked on her coffee. Married? We've been together for 3 months. I know. Julian's smile was soft. That's why I told her to wait at least another 3 before she starts planning. You're ridiculous. You love it. She did. Against all odds, despite everything, she did. The building would open in 6 months. Half gallery, half community space, funded by the settlement from the Blackwood estate and managed by both their names. A legacy rebuilt from ashes. Richard Carter was facing 25 to life for murder, conspiracy, and fraud. The trial had been brutal, public, painful. But it had also been cleansing. Truth, Olivia had learned, was its own kind of freedom. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Giving up your father's company? Walking away from everything you built?" "Never." Julian turned her to face him, his gray eyes clear and certain. "I traded a legacy of guilt for a future with you. Best deal I ever made." She kissed him there in the dusty lobby, surrounded by the ghosts of their grandfathers and the promise of what they were building together. When they pulled apart, Julian reached into his pocket. "Actually, about that marriage thing." He pulled out a small velvet box. "I know it's too soon. I know we're still figuring everything out. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So this isn't a proposal. It's a promise." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring with a single emerald, the color of her eyes. "When you're ready. If you're ready. I'll be here." Olivia's hands shook as she took the ring. "This is crazy. We're crazy. Completely." Julian's smile was wide, hopeful, terrified. "So what do you say?" She thought about her father, who'd died seeking truth. About her grandfather, who'd built something beautiful only to watch it crumble. About all the broken pieces of their family's pasts. And she thought about the future, uncertain and messy and absolutely worth fighting for. "Ask me again in 6 months." She slipped the ring onto her right hand, a promise for later. "When the building opens. When we've proved we can build something that lasts." 6 months, Julian agreed, pulling her close. "I can wait 6 months. And then? And then I'm going to marry you in this lobby, surrounded by everything our family's lost and everything we found." "That's a bold assumption. I'll say yes." "It is." He kissed her temple. "But I've learned to take risks on the things that matter." Olivia looked around the lobby, at the restoration work, at the future taking shape in real time. And she looked at the man beside her, who'd chosen her over revenge, who'd rebuilt his life for the chance to build something with her. 6 months, she repeated. "And if you're lucky, I might even let you pick the flowers." "Deal." They stood together as the afternoon light slanted through new windows, painting the old building in shades of gold and promise. 2 families' worth of mistakes and regrets, transformed into something neither of their fathers could have imagined. Love born from ruin. Hope built on truth. A future that belonged only to them. The end.